Permission to Play. This is Conversation 1 with Sarah Glan. She's a coach, a healer, and a friend, and we talk about all things around creativity, creating spaces, and what would happen if we give ourselves permission to play. I thought that we were missing real life conversations, and I personally was missing connection with humans at the moment. So what I decided to do was create this. It's a bit of an experiment. Are you laughing at me because I'm doing a voice? Why are you laughing? Is it this? I want to do it again because I am.
Yeah, sorry. I was when you said I was missing connection with humans. In my head, I went as opposed to aliens.
No, I'm really connected to aliens. They're not the problem. It's the people.
Exactly. I know. Yeah.
I don't think I belong on this planet. I belong somewhere else. I genuinely think it. Anyway, this whole thing is supposed to be very simple. It's just conversations with people around personal transformation, leadership, or what it means to be human. So just anything that's going on in their mind. I thought, if I can't find the conversations, I'll just create them. They're like really short 15-minute conversations where you have one topic, one conversation, and hopefully at the end of it, a thread to follow. So either you might pass the conversation on to somebody else that you think it might be interesting for me to speak to, or tell me about a conversation you'd like to hear next and I'll go find it. And then I will just see where the conversations take me. It's that simple. All right. Well, if I was to ask you my first question, if I said to you, what is taking space in your mind right now, whether it's in your thinking, whether it's in your work, whether it's in your life, what's really prevalent for you at the moment?
So the word that comes up for me is create, and there are different forms of it. So there are like to be creative. So sort of towards the end of the last year, I started reconnecting with the creative side of me, which has been sort of abandoned for decades. When I went to this art space, and I just really enjoyed just turning up to a creative space. There was no teaching involved. We could just pick and choose what we wanted, but then the teacher was there if we needed her. And it was so nice. It reminded me of when I was at art college, and that feeling of there's music in the background and everyone's just kind of focused on their whatever it is that they're creating, whether it's painting, a sketch, or like a print, or whatever it is. And then you're just sharing that space, and sometimes someone might have like a gentle chat, and then it's sort of like this in and out of kind of like connection, but you're connected in that space, but you're kind of all focused on like what it is, and you're just in flow. So there's that being creative, and actually the space that was created for us. And then I did this 13-day kind of rituals from the winter solstice where you write down 13 bits of paper, something that you would like to bring into the next year. So write all these 30 things down, and then each night you burn one. And the one that is left is the thing you're going to take forward. The one that I was left with, out of all the things that I'd written, was to create spaces that people need. I started to do it already with one which I had on Sunday. And one of the things that really came back from that, and very similar to the art teacher and the space that she holds, the space that I created was for people to reflect, to check in with themselves and look at the year ahead from a place of sort of where am I at now and how aligned do I feel and what's missing, and not to plan to do anything, but just to kind of reflect on where they're at and in a moment of sort of like coming home to themselves. So there's that creation. And ever since then, I've been thinking about that little piece of paper that had it on there. And my mind is just full of like, it's being really creative right now, just coming up with lots of different ideas. So that's being creative, and then also creating like a space for other people as well.
Okay, so I'm hearing you say at the moment, the thing that's in your mind is all about kind of creating space for other people, creating spaces, and also allowing the space for creativity. Yeah, really.
And in myself as well, like connecting with my own creativity, which I feel I've neglected for a really long time.
And you said something interesting as well, that you said that you'd abandoned your own creativity. Why do you think that happened?
Just life, just the pressures of life. So I'd, going from studying at college and university where you've got like 9 to 5, 5 days a week, where you're just like literally immersed into being creative, and then going to work with a 9 to 5 office job.
Mm.
And then, it's quite hard because you don't have that, for me anyway, that environment. And I think with the way that my brain works as well, I think I'm sort of like a bit yin yang. So there's part of me that can be really creative, and equally another part of me can be really kind of logical and practical and methodical. And it's that part that my day to day work is heavily in. And I think that's just been the dominant focus for me for years. But now finally things are starting to settle down, and I have been consciously, intentionally working towards creating more space in my life to dedicate it to the things that I enjoy, like creativity or working with people one to one and things like that.
Mm. And like, as you've been able to take some time to create more space, what does that feel like? So it sounds like where you were busy with life and work and everything else, where we employ our logical minds and we're in the thick of stuff, it sounds like more recently there's room for that creativity. What's that felt like for you?
It feels like home because I feel like that's just me, and it just feels so easy and natural. It
Mm.
feels like I'm just calm. I don't need to push. I don't need to like work hard. It's just nice. I just feel like I'm in the zone. I can just sort of be. I just feel really at ease.
Yeah, lovely.
Joyful. I love it.
Nice. And if you wanted to have more of that space in your life, more of that creativity, the space to create, what would you do if you could do anything?
I think I'm already sort of on the path to there. Like I say, I feel like I'd abandoned it for decades,
Mm.
and trying to create space is something I've been really intentionally working towards through small incremental changes. So, for example, a practical thing has been with the work that I do. Look at me, even the way I can feel the like when I'm saying it, but day to day. But most of my week is spent, with like strategy, logistics, compliance, like all of those things. And I've intentionally reduced my days so I have more time to work on like purely protected time. So I protect the time for like this creative expression, however
Mm.
it shows up. And I think being creative shows up in lots of different ways. I think sometimes people might think it's just drawing or like art, or performance, but it's using your mind in creative ways as well, and like experimenting and being playful. So some of the things I'm putting out at the moment, I don't know what's going to happen with it, but I'm just going to experiment, and I won't know until I've done it. And then it's just from seeing what comes back from those things. And that's being creative. So yeah.
If there was somebody out there listening in on this conversation and they were thinking, oh, there's part of me that I want to be a bit more creative, or there's part of me that I've neglected when it comes to my creative talents, whether it's, I don't know, poetry or art or anything, what would you say to them? What advice would you give them?
I would say to them that just start really small and take the pressure off of, I think we all do this. So we have this pressure of, oh, like I'm not doing anything. So therefore, oh. But actually, just start really small and just like really, really tiny little incremental changes or little tiny habits that become more frequent. And you just get like a little tiny bit of like that joy, whatever it is that it means to you, what it gives you. And then it would just grow over time. and had taken that pressure off of I want to create this masterpiece and I'm going to do everything for that. And I think because then that's actually really difficult to, not for everybody, but I think if we put the pressure on ourselves when we might not have the time or energy or resources to do something like that in a short space of time, is kind of setting yourself up to fail. But I think just trusting the process and just feeling your way forward, in addition to that, evaluating your life and how you're spending your time and your energy, and start creating a bit more space for those things that you want to do by removing the things that aren't really how you want to be spending your time, whether it's the people that you spend time with or tasks, and just slowly it will just start to build. I think just taking the pressure off of something, setting a goal of you're gonna, you haven't been doing something for a long time and then go, next year I'm going to do an exhibition, like for example, that kind of thing. There are people who can do it and things like that, but I think just listen in, just slowly sort of feel your way through small incremental changes or habits.
I've got a question for you. So I think I can talk about myself here. Like there are times when I feel super creative and I'm in flow and I've got lots of ideas coming. And there are other moments where I feel like I have a block and like I need to get something done, or I'm trying to create something and it's not, it's just not coming. Do you ever experience a creative block? And if you do, how do you manage it?
No, I don't experience a creative block. And I think it's because I'm not putting pressure on myself to achieve something or to try for something. So I think because there are different, some people say being creative is work. I like to set aside time to dedicate to it. And then others are, well, just go with the flow. I think it's a bit of both, but I think you have to just sort of lean into what is right for you. And I think if there's a block, you can't force it. I think if there's a block, it's probably something else, like what belief or something do you have around, like, why are you trying to do it? Is it really what you really want to do? Is there some limiting belief that's holding you back from it? I don't think it's that creativity isn't there. I just think it's something's in the way of you accessing it because some kind of thought or expectation or something that you're setting in yourself. Obviously, I'm not expert, but that would be my.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think you're right. Like how you feel and what thoughts going on in your head really can impact like what you do and how you just operate. And I think it is easy to get into your head at times. Some people can get into their heads and think about what they're trying to achieve or doing it quickly, or some sort of limiting belief they don't even know that they hold can definitely take hold, and it can have a huge impact. But actually what you're saying, I think it's quite interesting around kind of not trying to force something, take away the pressure, almost allowing yourself to play, experiment and see what happens. Yeah, that's really interesting. If I was to ask you if there is anything that you would like to share or anything else that you think would be useful for somebody else to hear, what would you tell me?
About the subjects that I'm talking about, or just anything at all?
In general, whatever you like.
I'd love to know, and this is in line with like the work that I do, is something that's coming up a lot. For example, this session I had on Sunday is the power of permission to do something. So in the session, I asked people to reflect and I gave them protected time. And it's quite a long time for them to just allow themselves to go through the page and sort of really reflect on some of the things that we discussed, or some of the questions that were raised. And it's so beautiful to witness, and everyone was so into it. And, they could choose anywhere they wanted to be. in their own little like space, like bubble, if you like. And numerous people had said, oh, it's just so nice to have this protected space to do that. And in reality, like we can do that whenever we want. But just the power of having a space that you physically, you go, you shut the door, you leave home, you shut the door, you go into a completely different space, and you've got that, like, you've got that permission, which is what somebody said. I'd love to ask someone a question around that and sort of find out more, because we all do it, don't we? What are we not giving ourselves permission to do?
That's a great question, actually. I think if people sat with it, it'd be interesting to see what comes back, you know.
Can I ask you that question?
No, I said the question, what am I not giving myself permission to do?
I mean, it's quite a loaded question, so maybe it's something you need time, but
Let me think about it for a minute. It's almost like I have to phrase it in a not a double negative to get my head around it. So I'm asking myself, what do I need permission for? Well, that's a really good question. Let me answer it. Give me a moment. I think part of it is some sort of validation. So really what I'm thinking is I have, in the work that I do, I spend a lot of time working with other people, creating a space. And then whether that's through coaching, whether that's through consultancy, but talking about the theme of creation, I'm sitting here thinking I always have random ideas, and they definitely come when I've not got the pressure. So if I was to sit down and think, right, I must create something, it's going to be stunted. But if I take away that pressure, which I have been doing actively, I have lots of ideas that come to the forefront of my mind, like so much so I walk around with little notebooks so I can capture them, or I put them somewhere digitally that I know I can get to them when I've made sure I've evaluated them and they're not like random. But I think the thing that might, like in line with this conversation, is probably getting in the way. And if I gave myself permission to just play with the ideas that I had, so I think is permission to play. But at the core of that, somewhere deep down, I'm thinking, well, it needs to be right, it needs to be good enough, it needs to have value, it needs to blah, 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 all the things that you think. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. I know that there will be lots of people that when they're putting something out there, whatever it is, they want to do a good job, you know, conscientiously want to do a good job. You want to make sure it makes sense. And I think we can get tied up in that and we don't give ourselves permission to play. So if we give ourselves the bits, the bloopers, if we saw that, I think like if I didn't give ourselves some permission to play, the conversation might not have happened. So
yeah,
I think that's important. I think if you don't give yourself, for me, if I don't give myself permission to play, I think lots of the things that I would love to bring to life might not ever happen. And I think that's a sad thing. That would be my answer.
I love that, permission to play.
Yeah.
Oh,
I love this conversation. Thank you. It's made me think about, you know, like how do you create space for yourself? It made me think about like how do you create space for others? How do you give yourself permission? Like what are the things that are getting in your way and that you're not allowing yourself to really explore when it comes to being creative? Like what does a creative space look and feel like for you? How do you fill up that inspiration wheel so you allow yourselves to be as creative as you can be? Or how do you create space for creativity in your life, I guess, for yourself and for other people? And what do you do to make sure you don't hold yourself back? I think is an interesting thing. And also that it's left me with the thought of like, it's one thing creating it for yourself, but it's also another thing when you're helping somebody else to have that space, because that's a powerful thing. So yeah, that's been really interesting.
so permission, creating spaces for people, and the permission to play, and then permission to take up space, like
Yeah.
whether that's externally or whether that's just protected just for us as an individual.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think lots of people find that hard to do. You know, you talked a little bit about some of the events that you've been holding, and you're doing exactly that, creating the space for people to be able to sit in it and then have the time for themselves. And do we do more of that, or how do people find more of that? Because that is also very helpful. You know, there's one thing doing it for yourself. it's another thing being held by another space holder, which gives you a completely different experience, I think, sometimes.
Yeah, and I suppose the other thing is about one of the nice things about when you're leaving home and you're going somewhere that is protected space, no one's gonna pop in, knock on the door and say, "Oh, can you just stop?" When you go to somewhere that is held for you, you don't worry about anything like that.
Almost like that space is sacred and making it sacred. It feels like we don't make enough time for it. We don't allow ourselves to have it. We certainly don't often get to places where people create it for us, and
Mm,
making sure that that space is sacred and protected, that
mm,
protected could be a super powerful thing.
yeah. Spaces with different things. For example, a space, one of the massive, like really, really key important spaces for me is just sitting on the beach because I can just, I don't know, it just feels amazing. And I'm really aware of like the expansion of the space in front of me when I'm looking at the sea and the sky. I'm in nature and it's a really calming and grounding space for me. And then there is like other space, like when you say maybe you don't do a meditation or something. And like for me in those times, I like it to be like sort of really cozy and soft lighting and things like that. So like the environment about the space is also like key as well.
Yeah, thank you. If before I let you go, if I was to say to you, what conversation would you like to hear next, or would you like me to have? What would you say?
I think it's sort of leading on from this.
If there's anybody that you think would be able to have in a conversation and it'd be an interesting place for me to kind of follow on with, you don't have to do it on the spot for sure, but it'd be great.
Yeah.
Just something that leads on from here, as in a thought that you've had or a person that's come to mind. That'd be great. Thank you, because you are my first person to have a conversation with, and I really appreciate it. So yeah, I've really enjoyed this conversation, and it's really taught me, actually, like, I know we maybe have spoken for a bit more than 15 minutes, but the amount of depth that you can get to in a really short space of time when you've got someone's focus, you have the attention, and you're having a conversation, I think it's really interesting. It's left me with lots to think about. So yeah, I just wanted to say a huge thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for asking.